I don't think there was ever a moment where my parents sat me down and said, "We love your sister more." But they didn't have to. It was in everything they did, every choice they made, every comment they brushed off like it was nothing. Growing up, I thought favoritism was just something kids exaggerated about. Like, oh, my brother gets the bigger slice of pizza, or she got a nicer birthday present. But in my house, it wasn't small stuff. It was life-altering, future-defining kind of favoritism. My sister, Jessica, could do no wrong. And me? I could never do enough. Jessica got pregnant at 19 with a guy who already had 2 kids from 2 different women. The guy was barely holding a job at AutoZone, and half the time he was crashing at our place because his lease fell through or his roommate screwed him. I remember thinking, this is it. This is where my parents finally draw a line. They'll say, enough is enough. Jess, figure your life out. Nope. They threw her a baby shower that could have been on Pinterest, bought her a car for safety, and then, when the baby came, they bought them a house. Not just any house, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath with a backyard. They signed the loan, pulled from their savings, and justified it by saying, "We invest in futures." Jessica is giving us real family. She's carrying on the legacy. I remember sitting at the dinner table when they said that, fork in hand, staring at my plate like if I looked up I'd scream. Real family. So I wasn't. Meanwhile, I was busting my ass in college. Double major, working at the library, applying for internships, all while Jessica was posting selfies about being a young mama boss, while mom and dad babysat half the week. I graduated with honors. First in our family to even graduate college. I thought, maybe this was the moment I'd finally earn some recognition. Maybe they'd see me. I asked them if they could help me with law school tuition. I didn't need them to cover all of it. I had scholarships, some savings, but I was short. I just needed a push. Dad laughed. Not like a gentle laugh, like a mean one. "We don't waste money on degrees," he said. "No man's ever going to marry a nerd, you know. You should focus on finding someone who'll take care of you." I felt my throat close up. All those nights studying, all the pride I carried in my chest. He reduced it to being a nerd no man would want. I went home that night, sat on the floor of my crappy apartment, and cried harder than I ever had. Not because I couldn't do it on my own. Deep down, I knew I could. But because it became crystal clear, they weren't ever going to believe in me. So I stopped asking. I worked, hustled, networked. I found mentors, took extra shifts, lived on ramen and coffee until I started landing internships that actually paid. Eventually, I got into a firm that valued me. And slowly, piece by piece, I built something. When I bought my first apartment, a 1-bedroom in a city where rent eats half your soul, I was proud. It wasn't big, but it was mine. I called my mom, excited, thinking maybe this was something she'd finally celebrate. She snorted. "A shoebox for losers. That's not something to brag about. Your sister's house has a yard. A real home." I think that was the first time I actually felt numb instead of hurt. Because it clicked. I could have bought a mansion, and she would have found a way to say Jessica had done better. Christmas that year was the cherry on top. I showed up with gifts, tried to swallow my pride. They took family photos in front of the tree. Later, when my mom posted them on Facebook, my face was cropped out. The caption? "Our pride and joy, Jessica and the kids. Carrying on the family legacy." I stared at it for so long my vision blurred. I was literally in the room. I had wrapped the gifts that were sitting under that tree, and they cropped me out like I didn't exist. I didn't confront them. Not then. I just started pulling back. Less calls, less visits. I poured myself into work. And when I finally landed a 6-figure job at the firm, I thought, well, maybe this was my moment. Maybe this time they'd have to admit I wasn't some invisible ghost in the corner of their lives. Instead, my mom called me. Not to congratulate me. Not to say she was proud. She asked if I could help out with Jessica's mortgage. "You're doing so well, honey. It would mean so much if you supported your sister's family. You know, she's raising the next generation." That was the first time I didn't swallow my anger. I laughed, sharp and cold. "I don't fund parasites," I said. And I hung up. 3 months later, my phone blew up. Missed calls, voicemails, even texts from Jessica's baby daddy. The house was in foreclosure. They were desperate. They needed help. And for the first time in my life, I was in a position to say no. The first voicemail I listened to was my mom, crying. "Honey, please, you don't understand. The bank is being unreasonable. If you could just cover a couple of payments, Your sister and the kids won't be out on the street. Then my dad's voice, stern but shaky. This is family. We help each other. Don't be selfish. Then Jessica, snapping through tears. I can't believe you'd let your niece and nephew lose their home when you're sitting on piles of money. You think you're better than us? You're pathetic. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, listening to each one like they were characters in a bad play. A few years earlier, I would have been gutted. Their words would have cut me open, and I probably would have scraped every cent together to bail them out. But now I just felt this cold clarity. They hadn't wanted me when I was struggling. They hadn't wanted to invest in me, or even see me. But the second I had something they wanted, suddenly I was family. I didn't respond. Not at first. I went to work, handled my cases, and tried to let the voicemails pile up without getting to me. But by the fifth day of nonstop calls, I finally answered one. It was my mom. Her voice cracked the second she heard mine. Oh, thank God. Honey, please, we're desperate. If we lose the house, Jessica won't survive it. The kids. The kids aren't my responsibility, I said flatly. My own voice surprised me. There wasn't anger in it, just exhaustion. She gasped like I'd slapped her. How could you say that? You're their aunt. How could you say half the things you've said to me my whole life? I asked. You invested in Jessica because she gave you grandkids. You laughed when I asked for help with school. You called my apartment a shoebox for losers. You cropped me out of your Christmas pictures. And now you expect me to swoop in like your personal bank. Silence. For once, my mom had no immediate comeback. Finally, she whispered, we didn't mean those things. We never thought you'd need us the way Jessica did. That right there was the truth. They had built this hierarchy in their minds. Jessica was fragile, needy, dependent. I was strong, independent, the one who would figure it out. But what they never understood was that strength doesn't mean I didn't deserve love or fairness or even a shred of recognition. I don't owe you anything, I said. And then I hung up. After that, things got messy fast. Jessica went nuclear on Facebook, posting cryptic statuses about fake family and selfish people who'd rather see kids homeless than share their wealth. Of course, all the extended relatives saw it. Suddenly I was getting calls from aunts, uncles, even cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, telling me I should step up. At first, I tried ignoring them. But then I got tired of being painted as the villain in a story they didn't even know the half of. So I posted one thing. Just one. Funny how when I graduated with honors, no one offered help. When I asked for support for law school, I was laughed at. When I bought my first apartment, I was told it was a shoebox for losers. When I got my six-figure job, I was asked to pay someone else's mortgage instead of being congratulated. Now, suddenly, I'm the selfish one. It blew up. I didn't tag anyone, but people put the pieces together quick. Half the family went silent. A few messaged me privately saying they had no idea what I'd been dealing with. Jessica, of course, doubled down, calling me jealous and bitter. But the damage was done. The narrative had cracked. People were finally seeing what I'd been living with for years. Meanwhile, the foreclosure moved forward. I kept my distance, even when my dad left me a voicemail saying, "You'll regret this. Family is everything. You'll die alone if you don't learn that." That one hit me harder than I wanted to admit. There's still a little kid inside me who wants my dad to be proud, who wants to belong. Hearing him say I'd die alone made me curl up in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if maybe he was right. Maybe I was throwing away any chance at reconciliation. But then I remembered Christmas, my cropped-out face, my mom's voice calling my home a shoebox for losers, my dad laughing about law school being a waste, and the sting turned into steel. They had made their choices. This was just the bill coming due. 2 weeks later, Jessica and her boyfriend were out of the house. My parents tried to take them in, but their place was too small and the tension was already boiling. Suddenly, the perfect golden child wasn't so golden anymore. Without the house, without the facade, everything started crumbling. And here's where the irony kicked in. Around the same time, I closed on a condo upgrade. A 2-bedroom, modern, with a view. I moved in quietly, didn't post it, didn't brag. But somehow, word got around. My aunt called me, half gossiping, half accusing, saying, "You mean to tell me you could buy a new place while your sister's kids were uprooted?" "Yes," I said simply. "Because I worked for it. Because I made sacrifices. Because I wasn't handed anything." That shut her up. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't the one scrambling to prove myself. I was just living. and they were the ones unraveling. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the tiniest spark of guilt when Jessica's daughter, 5 years old, called me auntie at a family gathering and asked if I'd come play. That little girl didn't choose any of this. None of it was her fault. That's when I realized my fight wasn't with the kids. It wasn't even with Jessica anymore. It was with my parents. They had built this broken system of favoritism, and now it was collapsing under its own weight. And I wasn't going to hold it up anymore. After Jessica and her boyfriend lost the house, the family dynamics shifted like tectonic plates under pressure. Suddenly, the golden child wasn't so shiny anymore, and my parents didn't know what to do with the fallout. For years, they had this neat script. Jessica was the struggling but lovable daughter who needed saving, and I was the independent one who didn't need anything. But now, the whole narrative had holes you could drive a truck through. My parents tried to patch it up fast. They called me constantly, but the tone changed. It wasn't crying or screaming anymore. It was bargaining. Just a couple of months. My mom pleaded once, her voice syrupy sweet. If you cover her rent while she gets back on her feet, we'll make sure she pays you back. I almost laughed. Jessica, pay me back. The girl who'd borrowed $20 from me at 16 and still hadn't mentioned it 10 years later? Then came my dad. He tried the pride angle. You've done so well for yourself. This is your chance to show your sister what responsibility looks like. Be a role model. I bit back the urge to say, I already was. You just didn't want to see it. Instead, I told him, I'm not a bank. I worked for what I have. Jessica made her choices. You can't expect me to clean them up. He sighed, frustrated, like I was being childish. That was his thing. Anytime I didn't fall in line, I was immature. Then Jessica herself texted me one night, long paragraphs filled with passive-aggressive jabs. You think you're better than everyone because you have money. Newsflash, no one likes you. You'll never have what I have, kids, a family, people who actually love you. All you'll ever have is your stupid job and your empty apartment. I stared at it for a long time. Old me would have crumbled under that. But instead, I just blocked her number. The truth was, I had built something she couldn't take away. Maybe I didn't have the Instagram perfect family she posted about, but I had stability. I had peace. I had something I never thought I'd feel around them, self-respect. Still, the guilt crept in at weird moments. Seeing her kids at a cousin's birthday party, playing in the yard with worn-out sneakers while Jessica sat off to the side sulking, it twisted my chest. They didn't ask to be pawns in my parents' favoritism game. They just wanted normalcy. And part of me hated myself for being able to give it to them, but refusing. Then again, another part of me thought, maybe the best lesson those kids could learn is that actions have consequences. That people aren't obligated to clean up your mess just because you share DNA. Christmas rolled around, and I decided to skip the family gathering altogether. The year before, they had cropped me out of pictures. I wasn't going to sit at the same table with people who couldn't even acknowledge me unless they needed something. Instead, I took a trip. Booked myself a cabin upstate, snow all around, a fireplace, just me and some peace. I didn't post about it, but of course, somehow Jessica found out. Probably from an aunt who stalks everyone's Venmo transactions. The group chat blew up. Jessica sent, glad you can spend money on vacations while your niece and nephew don't even have a proper Christmas tree. My mom followed with, I hope you're happy. Your sister is struggling while you hide in the woods. And my dad, the final dagger, selfish, heartless. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. That one stung. Again, it always stung coming from him. I wanted to scream. I was already alone because you made me that way. You chose her over me every single time. But I didn't respond. Silence was louder than anything I could have written. What I didn't know at the time was that my silence was starting to shift things behind the scenes. People were noticing. Aunts, uncles, cousins. They started piecing together that maybe Jessica wasn't the victim she painted herself as. That maybe my parents weren't these noble martyrs supporting their fragile daughter. At a family wedding in the spring, one of my uncles pulled me aside. I saw what you posted a while back, he said. About the scholarship, about law school. I had no idea. I shrugged, uncomfortable. It's not really something I advertised. He nodded slowly. You know, your dad bragged for years about how independent you were. But now I'm starting to wonder if he just used that as an excuse not to give you what you deserved. That hit me harder than anything my parents had said, because it was true. Independence had been the armor I built because I had no choice. But underneath it, I was just a kid who wanted to be seen. Meanwhile, Jessica's life kept spiraling. Her boyfriend bailed after the foreclosure, claiming he couldn't handle the pressure. She bounced between my parents' cramped house and a friend's couch, posting bitter Facebook rants the whole time. My parents, for once, didn't seem so proud to broadcast her legacy. And suddenly, I wasn't the invisible one anymore. People in the family, extended cousins, distant relatives, started asking me about my work, my apartment, my life. Not out of fake curiosity, but genuine interest. For the first time, I felt like I was the one rewriting the narrative. But the best part? My parents hated it. I could see it in their eyes at that same wedding, watching people congratulate me, ask for advice, praise my accomplishments. They couldn't crop me out of reality anymore. That's when it hit me. They didn't just lose the house. They lost control of the story. And they weren't about to let that go without a fight. After that wedding, I could feel the shift. For the first time in my life, people weren't treating me like the background character in Jessica's saga. My aunts asked me about my work. Cousins said they'd seen my name in a local article about young professionals in law. Even my uncle, who once joked that my books were a waste of time, asked me to look over a contract for him. And my parents hated it. They smiled for show, but I could see the way my mom's jaw clenched when someone complimented me. I could hear the bitterness in my dad's laugh when people said, "You must be so proud of both your daughters." The drive home from that wedding was silent until my mom finally snapped. "You looked smug tonight." I blinked. Smug? Yes. Sitting there, letting people fawn over you. It's tacky to brag, you know. I laughed because the irony was too much. I didn't brag. I answered questions. My dad cut in. "Don't get cocky. Money doesn't mean respect. Family does. Remember that." That line hit me in the gut, because here was the man who had never once stood up for me, lecturing me about respect. Over the next few months, the calls from them got more desperate. Jessica was struggling to hold down jobs, bouncing from one gig to another. She'd leave her kids with my parents for days at a time, then show up demanding sympathy. And my parents were exhausted. One evening, I came home from work and saw a voicemail from my mom. Her voice cracked like she'd been crying. "We can't do this anymore. The kids need stability. Jessica needs help. Please, if you could just cover part of the rent, we'll handle the rest. Think of your niece and nephew. They don't deserve this." I sat there with my phone on the counter, staring at the wall. The kids didn't deserve it. That part was true. But the reality was, if I stepped in financially, I'd be enabling the same cycle that had crushed me for years. They didn't want my help because I was the stable one. They wanted it because I was the expendable one. So I didn't call back. A week later, my dad showed up at my apartment. Unannounced. He hadn't been to my place once since I bought it. But suddenly he was on my doorstep, trying to look calm, but clearly fuming. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in, against my better judgment. He looked around my apartment, eyes scanning the framed degrees, the neat little living room, the plants by the window. And then he gave this bitter laugh. "So this is what you've built. All this for yourself." I crossed my arms. Yeah, for myself. Because no one else was going to do it for me. He didn't even flinch. Just shook his head. "You think you're better than us now. That job went to your head. But let me remind you, family sticks together. Your sister made mistakes, sure, but she's still blood. You're supposed to lift each other up." That word, supposed, lit me up inside. Supposed to? Like when you invested in her house and told me a degree was a waste of money. Like when you called my apartment a shoebox and cropped me out of family photos. Was I blood then? Or was I just the nerd who didn't matter? His jaw tightened. "You're twisting things. We just wanted the best for you." "No," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "You wanted the best for her. And you wanted me quiet enough not to make you feel guilty about it." Well, I'm done being quiet. For once, he had nothing to say. He just stared at me, like he didn't recognize me anymore. And then he left without another word. 2 weeks later, I heard through the family grapevine that my parents were telling everyone I had abandoned them, that I was cold, ungrateful, heartless. Some cousins bought into it, sure, but others didn't. People had started noticing the pattern for themselves. And honestly, it didn't bother me the way it used to, because their version of the story was crumbling. Every time Jessica posted another rant online about her evil sister, more people started questioning why. If I was so terrible, I was the only one thriving while she was always on the brink of collapse. Then came the breaking point. One night, around midnight, I got a call from an unknown number. When I picked up, it was Jessica. She was crying, panicked. They're going to evict us. The kids don't have anywhere to go. Please, just this once, help me. I swear I'll pay you back." I sat there in silence, heart pounding. And all I could think about was every moment she'd mocked me. Every time she'd flaunted the things my parents gave her while I got scraps. And then I thought of her kids, innocent, caught in the wreckage. Finally, I said, "Jessica, I'm sorry. I can't." She exploded. "You selfish bitch. You'd rather watch us drown than lift a finger. No wonder no one likes you. You'll die alone in your stupid apartment while I'll always have family." And I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat there breathing. For the first time, I realized I wasn't the powerless one anymore. They could call me every name in the book, but the truth was they needed me, not the other way around. And I wasn't giving them what they wanted. The fallout from that decision would ripple harder than I ever expected. Because a few months later, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving in a way that made every insult, every dismissal, every shoebox loser comment come back to haunt them. And this time, I was the one holding all the cards. When I said no to Jessica that night, I thought it was just one decision. But in reality, it was the line in the sand I had been avoiding my whole life. Because once you stop bending to people who only take, there's no going back. A few months later, everything came crashing down for them. I was sitting in my office when I got a call from my cousin Mark. He's one of the few family members I actually like, someone who saw through the favoritism early on. He goes, have you seen your parents' place lately?" I hadn't. I hadn't stepped foot in that house in over a year. "They've got foreclosure notices plastered on the door," he said. "Jessica moved back in with them after she lost the house. It's a mess, dude." And part of me thought, of course it is. Because this was always where their version of reality was heading. You can't build a life on denial and favoritism. You can't shovel every resource into one kid who doesn't want stability while dismissing the one who works for it. Eventually, the math doesn't add up. I didn't rush over. I didn't call. But that didn't stop them from showing up in my life again. It started with texts from my mom. First, guilt trips. "The kids miss you. Don't you care about your niece and nephew?" Then desperation. "We might lose the house. Just a little help, please." I ignored them. Then came the phone calls. My dad this time, his voice gravelly, like the weight of it all was finally breaking through. "You've made it. You've got more than enough. Be better than this. Step up for your family." Family. That word again. The one they only used when they needed me. And then, one night, they showed up at my apartment building. I don't know how they got past the front desk, but suddenly I heard pounding on my door. When I opened it, my mom was crying. Jessica standing behind her with her arms crossed like some queen fallen from her throne. Mom gasped, "They're taking the house. We have nowhere to go. Please, you can cover the mortgage. Just until we figure it out." I just stood there, letting the silence stretch until Jessica snapped. "You're really going to stand there in your fancy little apartment and watch your own family go homeless? You think that makes you better than us?" And I swear, something inside me finally cracked open. Not in anger, but in clarity. I looked right at her and said, "No, I don't think I'm better than you. I know I am. Because I built this. Alone. And you had everything handed to you and threw it away. Don't project your failures onto me." Jessica's face went red. "You bitch." But my dad cut her off. His voice was low, almost pleading. "Please, just help us this once. We'll pay you back." I actually laughed. "Pay me back? Like you paid me back when you tanked my chances at law school? Like you paid me back when you cropped me out of family photos? No, this isn't about money. This is about choices. And you chose her. Over and over again. Now you can live with the results." My mom sobbed harder. Jessica cursed under her breath. My dad just stood there, his shoulders slumped, like the fight had finally drained out of him. And then I closed the door. I leaned against it for a long time, heart pounding, half expecting them to keep pounding, to scream, to make a scene. But they didn't. Eventually, I heard footsteps fading down the hall. That was the last time they tried to show up in person. But the story didn't end there. Because a few months later, I made a move that none of them saw coming. I had been saving and investing quietly for years. My salary was good, but I was smart about where it went. And when the opportunity came up, I bought a property. Not just any property, the exact house my parents and Jessica had been foreclosed on. The bank listed it, and I scooped it up. When the paperwork cleared, I sat in the empty living room, staring at the walls that had once held every Christmas where I was cropped out of photos, Every dinner where Jessica's achievements were paraded while mine were dismissed. Every night, I went to bed wondering why nothing I did was enough. And now it was mine. I didn't tell them. Not at first. I rented it out to a sweet young couple who treated the place better in a month than my family had in decades. Word eventually got back to them, though. Jessica texted me one day, pure rage spilling out. "You're sick. Buying our house just to spite us? You're disgusting." I didn't reply. Then my dad called, his voice trembling. "I don't know who you've become, but this isn't the daughter I raised." And I said, "You're right. It isn't. Because the daughter you raised was invisible. And I'm not invisible anymore." I hung up before he could answer. That was it. That was the final cut. They never got another dime, another chance, another ounce of my energy. Now, years later, I still drive by sometimes. I see the kids playing in the yard, the new family's kids, not Jessica's. And there's a strange kind of peace in it. Because the house isn't a monument to what I lost anymore. It's proof of what I built, despite them. People sometimes ask me if I regret not helping my parents when things got bad. I don't. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because enabling them would have kept me locked in the same role forever. The scapegoat. The ATM. The invisible one. I chose me. Finally. And the thing that makes it all sting for them, I think, is that they can't rewrite the narrative anymore. They can't pretend Jessica is the shining star while I'm the failure. Everyone sees the truth now. I don't have to shout it. I don't have to post about it. I just live it. And they're left with nothing but the echo of their choices.